I can include myself in that. I used to listen to Radio 5 Live all the time, and Nicky Campbell would have his morning phone-ins, and occasionally you would get someone who would phone up saying, "Oh, 9/11, I think that was an inside job," and Nicky Campbell would immediately shut him down. And then after hearing a bit about you, I looked into some of the 9/11 evidence and, you know, the official 9/11 story. There's quite a good documentary about it called 9/11, the myth and the facts, I think, something of that nature. And just gobsmacked that there was all this evidence out there that I'd never even heard of in the mainstream arena. So, you know, I'm now starting to think that on the balance of probabilities, if it was in the court of law, that 9/11 was an inside job. And yet, when I've been talking about it to colleagues and friends, suddenly they're worried for my mental health. So it's quite an interesting world.
There are a few things to that. First of all, there's a great question that opens up a great vista of possibility, and it's quite simply who benefits. Because it's an ancient saying, he who most benefits from the crime is the one most likely to have committed it. And just look at who's benefited from 9/11. Anyone that wanted this series of regime changes and catastrophic wars and upheaval in the Middle East, because without 9/11, if you wind back, that would never have started. But in terms of the way journalism looks at the world and reports the world, having been a mainstream journalist for a long time in newspapers, radio and television, seen it from the inside and then seen it from the other side, it is frankly rather pathetic, because I say in the talks and the books all the time that the world is an inversion, human society is an inversion, everything's on its head. And the reaction to you just questioning anything from journalistic colleagues is a classic example of this inversion, because all you're doing is what a journalist should do. What journalists should do is ask questions of official versions of everything, especially statements by authority, to see if they stand up. That's the job of a journalist. There's no point in journalism otherwise. But instead of that, the statements by the authority become the accepted norm of how things are. This is the very opposite of what journalism should be. And you've got a guy in America, on Fox News called Tucker Carlson, and it's not often you can put Fox News and good journalism in the same sentence, but you can with Tucker Carlson for one simple reason. He just asks questions that need to be asked of authority. And he gets attacked by his own profession because of it, because we've now reached an extreme level of journalistic irrelevance to truth, that the journalistic profession, instead of holding authority to account so that authority has to justify its statements and its claims and its actions, journalism now justifies those claims and actions. And there's no better or two better examples than what has happened recently. You had a government claim that Russia was responsible for the alleged nerve agent attack in Salisbury. They produce absolutely no evidence whatsoever except the old Nazi adage of keep repeating the lie and people will believe it. And yet journalists who call themselves journalists just accepted it. And worse than that, and this is the other extension of this journalistic lack of integrity, is that they then attack people who were doing what they should be doing, which is questioning where the evidence is. And you saw this in the House of Commons with Corbyn, when even many in his own side were jeering when he stood up and asked Theresa May for evidence for the claim that Russia was behind the Salisbury attack. We are in a post-truth, post-evidence society where neither matter. What happens is authority makes a statement, and then the journalistic profession, not with honourable exceptions, but in general, it becomes the mouthpiece and protector of that version of everything. And of course, the other one is the chemical attack alleged by Assad in Syria, when the overwhelming evidence is that it was set up by these white helmets, which are funded by the West, funded by America, funded by Britain, funded by European countries, and therefore are a propaganda arm of those countries and the agenda of those countries, particularly America. And there was no questioning of it. There was no, well, where's the evidence? There was no reporting of the doctors and people actually on the alleged film of the attack saying there was no chemical attack. And so this is very, very dangerous world we're in now, thanks to a spineless, gutless journalistic profession who it is quite happy to take the check to pay the mortgage by not questioning what it should be questioning and not doing the job that journalists should be doing.
In regards to the honourable exceptions, there's Robert Fisk from the Independent. I think he did a report where he couldn't find any evidence.
That's right. Yeah.
And he was, before we started recording, I mentioned to you how I'd attended an NUJ delegate conference at Southport, funnily enough, the same venue where you spoke, and it was mentioned a Robert Fisk article. And one of the delegates, one of the ones against a motion to have the NUJ call for a fairer quizzing of the government on Syria in terms of not accepting everything they say. So this bloke got up and said, well, it's all very well believing Robert Fisk, but that's not what the majority of people are saying. And then a BBC delegate got up and said, well, it's a case of believing us, the BBC, or do you want to believe the Russians? Making it a completely binary choice. There's no room for grey in that, in terms of there might be hidden agendas from one person. And like you say, the most important question is who benefits? And in that case, the chemical attack was the worst possible thing that could happen to Assad, and quite a good thing for someone who wants to have regime change there.
Exactly. But you see, that story of the National Union of Journalists event is classically where journalism is. I saw an interview on the BBC with a guy called Lord Weston. He was a very, very high guy in the British Navy. And he was saying at the time of the alleged chemical attack, but where's the evidence? And by the way, why would Assad do it? It was the last thing that he would benefit from. And the interviewer on the BBC said, but we're in an information war. We are in an information war. Aren't you basically helping the Russians by asking these questions? And it was a shocking confirmation of the bias of the media, and not least the BBC. There should be no we. It should be what is the evidence, what is the truth. That should be the only criteria for a proper journalist. The communication of information is being funneled into the hands of shockingly few people. I mean, if you break it down, you can name 5 people that have the power to control what people see and don't see on an absolutely vast global scale. They are the people that run Google, the people that run Google on YouTube, and the people that run Facebook. And in that tiny part of the world, Silicon Valley, that I call the devil's playground, they now have the ability not only to censor, and they're using it, what people see and don't see on an increasingly extreme scale. They also have the ability for mass global surveillance on the population. And people need, if proper journalists would be saying, how did this concentration of power happen?